All kicks off with a frantic dash through the hospital corridors, straight for the ER. Inside, a patient is in critical condition. The nurses notice his heartbeat and breathing have stopped. Just then, our protagonist jumps into action, starting chest compressions to try and bring the guy back. Thankfully, the medical team's efforts pay off, and the monitor shows the patient's heart is beating again. With the situation under control, two nurses breathe a sigh of relief, thanking Dr. Yechu for saving the day once more. One of them takes a chance to gossip about another doctor, calling him a total jerk. But our guy overhears them and chimes in, saying it's no big deal. His job is to save lives, even if it means running a little behind. He then lets the nurses know the patient is stable, and that they can call him if they need anything at all. As the doctor walks away, the ladies sigh, commenting on how nice it would be to have a husband just like him. And with that, our guy finally heads to his apartment to get some rest after another long day at work. When he gets in, he glances at the clock and realizes he's super late, figuring his girlfriend, Lily, must be worried. The protagonist reflects that he's been working way too much and decides to take the weekend off to make it up to her. As he gets closer to the bathroom, he hears his girlfriend's voice saying she missed someone. Our guy cracks the door open just a tiny bit to peek inside, but what he sees is anything but good. With a look of pure shock, he wonders how this could even be possible, realizing he's been getting played this whole time. Standing frozen in front of the bathroom, he watches the scene unfold through the steam. Heartbroken and filled with rage, our MC's fist clenches tightly. In his mind, our guy wonders who that other man could be. But then he thinks, what's the point? It's better to leave them with a shred of dignity. Inside, the girl rushes her lover, telling him to hurry up and leave before Yichu gets home. The man then asks if she doesn't find the whole risky situation a bit more thrilling. Hearing the guy's voice, our protagonist realizes he knows him from somewhere. His girlfriend then asks if her lover has talked to his dad about her promotion. He confirms he'll help, and our guy finally recognizes the voice of Go Xiaokong. In that moment, he understands that Lily traded him for this dude, all for a promotion. The young man keeps listening and figures out they're talking about his job. Gu brags that our protagonist doesn't stand a chance because his dad calls all the shots there. The rival even mocks our MC, calling him a loser for not taking things further with her. He keeps provoking her, asking if she feels even a little bit sorry for her boyfriend. With contempt, she replies that he's just a bastard and that she couldn't care less about him. Hearing that, our protagonist is completely floored. The word bastard hits him right where it hurts. After all, his own mother was kicked out of her family for that very reason, and it's a weight he's carried his whole life. In the bathroom, the curious rival asks why, and the girl reveals that our MC doesn't even know who his own father is. The lover then scoffs at the situation and makes a tasteless joke about our protagonist's mother. But that was the last straw. Our guy storms into the bathroom and lands a solid punch right in his rival's face. Startled by the intrusion, the rival asks who it is. But our MC doesn't say a word, just glares at the two of them with a look of pure fury. The lover finally recognizes him, and the ex-girlfriend panics, realizing he's found out everything. Heartbroken, the protagonist says he never imagined Zhang Lily was this kind of person. The girl covers herself with a towel and retorts that she must have been blind to have fallen for a loser like him. She goes on complaining that in over 2 years of dating, all she ever got was an old bracelet. She rips off the bracelet and says from now on, they'll go their separate ways. Our guy has a flashback to when she used to be happy and wonders how she could have changed so much. He then looks down at the bracelet she threw on the floor, reflecting on the end of their relationship. The rival taunts him, asking if he wants to stick around and watch the show. With that, our MC's patience runs out, and he decks the rival with another punch. The lover complains about being hit again, and we see the punch knocked one of his teeth out. But the guy refuses to back down, yelling that he's not afraid of him as the girl watches it all go down. The rival lunges forward and lands a punch that sends our MC crashing to the floor. Without a shred of pity, the aggressor stomps hard on the hand of our guy, who is down and defenseless. With a cruel smirk, the aggressor grinds his foot into our MC's hand and says he doesn't know what's good for him. After that, the rival tells the girl it's time to go, leaving him on the floor like a total loser. As he lies on the ground with his injured hand, a mysterious voice suddenly comes from the bracelet. The voice introduces itself as an ancestor of the Ye family, revealing that he left his consciousness within the jewelry. The spirit laments seeing his descendants in such despair and decides to teach the young man everything he knows. But he warns that if our guy doesn't follow his lessons, his end will be a tragic and lonely one. Suddenly, a golden energy dragon shoots out of the object and slams right into our protagonist's chest. He feels an immense pain and is completely stunned by the vision. As soon as the vision ends, the young man finds himself back in the bathroom, with no clue what just happened. Angry, he remembers the betrayal and curses the despicable couple for everything they did. Just then, the young man gets up and notices a strange blue aura coming from his hands. He looks at his hand, which was injured before, and wonders what on earth is going on. Still confused, our MC starts to wonder if that dream he had was real or just a hallucination. Then, a flood of knowledge about ancient talismans and charms rushes into the protagonist's mind. He learns about various types of spells, including talismans for good luck, bad luck, and even movement. The knowledge keeps coming, and he learns about 108 types of spells, including exorcism and celestial vision. Completely shocked by all of this, the protagonist wonders what the heck is happening. Looking at his hands, the protagonist is stunned by the blue energy radiating from them. Suddenly, his cell phone starts ringing, and the caller ID shows the name Miss Bai Bing. Still on the floor, he answers the call and asks if Director Bai wanted to speak with him. On the other end of the line, a woman who sounds furious orders the young man to meet her at the hospital first thing in the morning. Without questioning it, our guy simply agrees to the order and hangs up. He then reflects on what could have happened, since the director had never been that angry with anyone before. The next morning, the protagonist heads to the hospital to meet his boss, as planned. As soon as he enters the hallway, a few people are surprised to see an elegant woman walk by. Other patients recognize her, commenting that she's the famous Professor Bai who operated on their family members. This is Bai Bing, the youngest chief surgeon in Jiangzhou, with an impressive and mysterious resume. Meanwhile, our MC walks through the halls, and some doctors stare him down with contempt. The other doctors whisper among themselves, wondering how he still has the nerve to show his face around there. Ignoring all the nasty comments, the young man finally arrives at the director's office door. He takes a deep breath, looking pretty nervous about what's about to happen. Mustering his courage, the young man knocks on the door and announces himself to Director Bai. A voice tells him to come in, and our guy stands frozen in front of the director's desk. With a serious look, the woman asks if our MC knows why she called him in. Visibly nervous, the young man replies that he has no idea what's going on. But the director gives him a cold stare and says she always held him in high regard. The woman gets angry and throws a stack of papers at him, saying he's deeply disappointed her. On the papers are two identical medical reports, but one is signed by him and the other by Guo Xiaokong. In complete shock, the protagonist wonders how his thesis and Guo Xiaokong's could be exactly the same. His boss accuses him of plagiarism, and the young man drops to his knees, trying to explain that he spent the entire month working on that thesis. He then says his ex-girlfriend, Zhang Lily, was on the night shift with him and can prove his innocence. However, the woman doesn't believe a word of it and reveals that Zhang Lily testified against him. Devastated, the young man can't believe his ex-girlfriend betrayed him yet again in such a way. The director then informs him that, effective immediately, he is fired from the clinic and will be transferred. In shock, our MC wonders how he can ever be a doctor if he's been demoted to a nursing position. Completely defeated, the young man leaves the office and walks past the same doctors who looked down on him before. With a look full of hatred, he swears he will make that traitorous couple pay for everything they've done. Still shaken by the news, the protagonist waits for the elevator to leave the floor. Just then, the metal doors begin to slowly open right in front of him. To his surprise, inside are none other than his ex-girlfriend and her lover, wrapped in an embrace. With his blood boiling, our MC thinks that you really do run into your enemies in the worst possible places. The rival taunts him, saying what a coincidence it is to run into him, and our guy curses his bad luck. The antagonist says he's lucky Bai Bing is looking out for him. Our protagonist is confused, not understanding why he would bring up Director Bai. Then the traitor feigns surprise and asks if the two of them aren't involved somehow. To provoke him, the guy asks an inappropriate question about the director, and our MC gets ticked off. At that, the ex-girlfriend chimes in that she got rid of the best intern so he could shine. The villain continues to mock him, saying he can do whatever he wants to our MC at the hospital. The young man then realizes the director is actually trying to help him and that he can't leave the hospital. The lover asks why she ever dated such trash, and the girl says it's because she didn't know him back then. Chagrined, the rival invites the girl to a hotel, and she acts all shy. He keeps up the taunts while our MC just watches the scene in complete silence. But on the inside, the young man is absolutely furious, clenching his fists tightly. He then remembers the elevator has cameras and knows he can't do anything right now. Our guy calms himself down, deciding he can hold it a little longer. After all, revenge is a dish best served cold. Finally, the elevator reaches the first floor, and a chime echoes through the area. As soon as the doors open, the rival stops him from leaving, grabbing him by the shoulder. With a look of contempt, our MC asks what else he could possibly want from him. The antagonist just laughs and says he's not going to make things easy for the guy at the hospital. At that moment, the traitor starts shouting to get everyone's attention in the lobby. He then spins a made-up story about plagiarism and assault to ruin our MC's reputation. With that, the people around them start whispering and judging the young man without knowing the truth. Even the other employees are shocked, saying how scary it is to have a colleague like that. Our MC grinds his teeth in anger but continues to hold back to avoid making things worse. But the villain isn't done yet and asks for everyone's attention for one more thing. The antagonist then reveals that the young man was raised by a single mother, humiliating him in front of everyone. This final insult seems to have hit a nerve, and our guy's anger flares. The people around them are shocked by the revelation about the protagonist's family. A few guys start mocking him, questioning how someone like that could ever become a doctor. Unable to take any more humiliation, our MC starts running, trying to get away from all the stares. He then realizes that if he leaves like this, his career as a doctor will be over for good. Suddenly, our guy stops running, and a blue aura surrounds him as an idea sparks in his mind. While the rival mocks him for running away, our MC decides it's time to try something new. With a furious gaze, the protagonist asks if the rival isn't afraid of the consequences of his lies. But the antagonist just scoffs, saying he's not afraid of anything, because he's just telling the truth. With a subtle smile on his lips, our MC prepares to make his move. Then out of nowhere, the antagonist collapses, spitting up a mouthful of red liquid. The villain is down on the ground as everyone wonders what just happened to him. Something belonging to the villain shatters on the floor with a loud crash. Lying on the ground, the antagonist curses in pain, his face covered in cuts. Just then, the guy cries out in pain and his ex-girlfriend watches, completely shocked by the situation. With that, the girl rushes to help him and asks if he's okay, but he just responds sarcastically. The protagonist then walks over and asks if the rival doesn't think this is karma. Hearing this, the girl is completely stunned by our MC's words. Turning to the young man, the girl accuses him of planning the whole thing, and he simply asks if she has any proof. The traitor then asks the girl to help him get to the emergency room, and she agrees. As she helps him, the ex-girlfriend tells the guy to hang in there because she's going to help him. A nurse passing by trips and screams. The tray she was carrying goes flying, and vials of medicine shatter in mid-air. The liquid splashes directly onto the rival's wounds, and he screams in pain from the sting. The ex-girlfriend is shocked by what's happening. The nurse apologizes profusely while the girl scolds her for not paying attention. The girl yells for other nurses to bring a wheelchair to move the injured man. The girl gets the rival into the wheelchair and says she'll take him to the ER, but when they try to get into the elevator, it gets stuck. With that, the antagonist screams in pain as the elevator door crushes his body. The ex-girlfriend tries to pull him out, but he complains that she's hurting him. Just then, security guards arrive and try to pry the door open while the villain screams. Suddenly, the hospital lights go out, plunging everything into complete darkness. Trapped in the dark, the traitor panics and starts screaming desperately for help. The people around them start to wonder if this really is some kind of divine punishment. Meanwhile, our protagonist just watches the scene unfold with a cold, calculating look. The story then flashes back 1 hour, showing an ancient book of spells. We see our guy holding a talisman and saying he's going to test it on someone. The object is revealed to be a powerful bad luck talisman shrouded in a blue aura. Back in the present, the young man thinks that evil always gets punished, and that the item worked like a charm. It's then revealed that the talisman is in our MC's pocket. A satisfied smile, our MC watches the chaos he himself created. The scene then shifts to the garden at the hospital entrance, where there's a large pond. Protagonist is walking by, thinking he can't go home yet and worry his mother. But suddenly, he hears a scream and realizes someone just fell into the water. A child is flailing in the pond, and the people around are screaming desperately for help. The little boy starts to go under, and someone yells for them to call for an ambulance. Without a second thought, our MC sprints towards the pond to save the boy. He then dives into the water. Focused on the rescue, our guy swims with all his might to reach the boy in danger. He manages to grab the kid and starts swimming back to the edge of the pond. Once on solid ground, the young man asks where the child's parents are, and someone shouts that help is on the way. But the little boy is unconscious and isn't moving, making everyone around them extremely worried. Realizing how serious it is, our MC doesn't waste a second and starts CPR to revive him. The boy begins to react, his eyes fluttering open. After a few tense moments, the boy finally coughs, spitting out all the water he swallowed. Disoriented, the boy asks who he is, and our MC tells him he saved him and asks about his family. Suddenly, an old man and his bodyguard come running, calling the boy's name, who shouts, "Grandpa." The elderly man hugs his grandson, worried sick, and asks if he's hurt, but the boy just apologizes for the accident. The little boy then points to our protagonist and says he was the one who pulled him out of the water. Our guy then suggests they take the boy to the hospital and warns the grandfather to be more careful. The bodyguard doesn't like his tone and asks if the young man knows who he's talking to, but the old man scolds him. The gentleman then asks his assistant to take his grandson to the car, as they really need to get to the hospital. Turning to our MC, the old man thanks him and admits he's right, promising to be more careful. Taking a closer look, the young man notices the old man's gold chain, indicating he's someone wealthy. His clothes also look to be high quality, confirming that this elderly man is no ordinary person. With this realization, our MC gets a little nervous as he understands the situation he's stumbled into. But the gentleman thanks him again and asks for his name so he can repay him, and the young man introduces himself, saying it was nothing. As a token of gratitude, the old man offers him a card with $500,000, but the protagonist refuses it. They stare at each other for a moment, and the old man, changing the subject, our MC asks if the gentleman often feels some kind of discomfort. The old man is surprised by the question and denies it, saying he gets regular check-ups and is perfectly healthy. Our MC then says he senses something different about him but adds that he could be mistaken and tells him to pay it no mind. With that, the young man says goodbye and reminds the gentleman to take his grandson to the doctor for a check-up. Watching the young man walk away, the old man is left pondering what just happened. He remembers that he has consulted the best doctors in the world over the years to manage his health. But despite all their efforts, none of them could ever diagnose the serious illness he had. He then wonders if heaven is giving a dying man a chance to live a few more years. Now in the car, the gentleman calls his bodyguard, who asks what the Dragon King wishes to do. The Dragon King then orders his assistant to find out everything about the young man, saying he wants to know every single detail of his life. Meanwhile, our MC has no idea that he has just caught the attention of someone very influential. Arriving home, our MC calls out to his mom, letting her know he's back. Just then, his mother appears with a plate of food and asks why he's all wet. She dries his hair and guesses that he fell in the lake, which surprises the young man. But the food smells amazing, and his mother insists that he tell her what happened. So, he explains that he saved a child from drowning, that the boy's grandfather showed up right after. His mother says he did the right thing but asks him to be careful because his life is precious to her. She emphasizes that he is her whole world and that she doesn't want anything to happen to her son. The young man replies that she's important too and jokes that he'll get sick if she keeps feeding him like that. The lady smiles at the joke, and we learn her name is Chien Jinglin and that she came from a large family. Our MC remembers finding old photos that prove it, but his mother never talks about the past. He thinks that even though they were a wealthy family, they were cast out and never had contact again. Because of this, he carries the image of his mother suffering, as she was forced to leave with him as just a baby. But the protagonist hates the man who abandoned them even more, the one he has never even met. He considers his father an irresponsible man who doesn't deserve to live for leaving his mother all alone. The young man sighs, remembering that whenever he asked about his father, his mother would just become quiet and sad. He decides to drop it, knowing it would only make his mother sad to bring up those memories. His mother then asks him to call Lily for dinner because she wants to talk to the girl. She says she wants to see her grandkids soon, and this visibly upsets the protagonist. The young man says his goodbyes, claiming he's tired, and his mother agrees he needs some rest. Then goes into his room and closes the door. Lying in bed, he thinks that he needs to talk to his mother about something important. The thing is, he has no idea how to tell his mother that his girlfriend cheated on him. Tired of thinking about it, he tosses and turns in bed, unable to sleep. Suddenly, he remembers something important that could change everything. He then recalls the complete collection of Maoshan talismans that his family possesses. But he remembers that the collection isn't just limited to talismans. The Ye family also possesses numerous secrets of medical and martial arts, among other techniques. Since he can't sleep, he decides to do something useful with this knowledge. And so, the night passes quickly and a new day begins. The young man was up all night and is amazed by his family's treasures. He then checks the clock, which reads 8:10, and realizes he needs to get to work. In a hurry, the young man says goodbye to his mother, who tells him to take it easy and that there's no need to rush. Her son leave, the lady smiles and thinks how incredible that boy's energy is. Arriving at the hospital, we see a sign for the nurses' station. There, our MC finds a few nurses, and one of them looks pretty shaken up. A colleague explains that the patient in room 301 is difficult and has already sent 4 people away. Just then, the head nurse shows up and assigns our MC to take care of this complicated patient. With little choice, our guy agrees and heads to the woman's room. To his surprise, the patient is a very beautiful woman who invites him in. The protagonist is left speechless and blushing at the beauty of the woman in front of him. She then questions the hospital for sending a male nurse to take care of her. He tries to be professional, shows his badge, and introduces himself as Ye Chiu. The patient repeats his name and, with a smile, pulls him closer to her on the bed. The woman asks what he thought when he first saw her, and our guy stammers that he found her beautiful. She leans close to his ear and asks which part of her he liked the most. She slowly brings her face closer to our MC's, then her body clearly setting a mood. Our guy gets totally flustered and gently tries to push her away to maintain his composure. The woman laughs and says he's shy and wasn't very honest with his answer. Our MC tries to keep his cool and informs her that he's going to examine her leg. But she teases him, saying she's shy, that it's weird to have someone touching her leg. Ignoring the provocation, the young man kneels down to begin the procedure. Carefully, he begins to examine the patient's injured leg. As he removes the bandage, he sees a large scar, and she complains of intense pain. At that moment, the young man asks how she got that injury. The woman explains it was a car accident that broke her bones. Analyzing the wound, our MC realizes she doesn't need another surgery. Just then, a doctor enters the room, and the patient says she doesn't want to be left with scars. She says she was in a bad mood, but the nurse has cheered her up a lot. The woman asks the doctor about the scar, and he says it will take months to treat. Woman is clearly disappointed and asks if there's any other solution. The protagonist then interjects, saying he can heal her in a week. The doctor becomes furious and yells at the young man, calling him a quack. The doctor's assistant also gets angry, saying a nurse isn't allowed to give diagnosis. But the patient cuts off the argument with a serious look. The doctor tries to convince her not to listen to the young man, calling it superstition, but she tells the doctor to shut up. The woman then gets up and challenges him, asking if he can really remove her scars in a month. The protagonist explains it to her, and she's confused by the mention of spells, questioning what he just said. Our guy then explains that they are secret techniques with magical powers, not superstition. She asks if he can really remove her scars, and the young man says it will take about 5 minutes. The doctor and his assistant don't believe him and question why he's just a nurse if he's so powerful. The protagonist gets awkward and explains that he was framed by a guy named Go Shokong. The doctor tells him to stop making excuses, but the patient interrupts him and tells the doctor to be quiet. She complains that hospitals are useless, and since they can't help her, they shouldn't get in the way of someone who can. That the woman hires the young man as her personal nurse and tells him to get started. Our MC thanks her for her trust and says he will begin the procedure immediately. He then makes a hand sign, and a golden energy begins to swirl around him. Our guy focuses all this power into his hands, forming a brilliant sphere of light. With a swift motion, he places a paper talisman over her wound. The doctor watches the whole thing with a smirk, saying the protagonist is a good actor. The assistant agrees, suggesting he should try his luck as an actor instead of a nurse. But our MC simply ignores them both, remaining completely focused on his spell. Suddenly, the talisman on her leg begins to glow with a very bright light. The patient is shocked to see that her scar has simply vanished. The doctor stares at her leg in disbelief, unable to process what he's seeing. The woman's skin is flawless, and the doctor wonders how it could be possible. Desperate, the doctor grabs her leg and shouts that it's impossible to recover that quickly. But the patient is furious and kicks him away, calling him a creepy old man. With a cold glare, the woman says that if he has nothing else to do there, he can leave. The doctor gets embarrassed and tries to apologize, saying it wasn't his intention. The woman then asks our MC to teach her some beauty tricks, and he agrees. Outside the hospital, there's quite a crowd. The doctor walks in silence, looking very thoughtful about what just happened. His assistant then asks if the protagonist is really that powerful and how he did it. Annoyed, the doctor yells at his assistant and tells him to shut his mouth right now. The doctor then tells the young man to go back to the office because he needs to be alone. Meanwhile, we see the patient's room, now empty and quiet. The patient remains silent for a moment, just staring at the young man with a thoughtful expression. Noticing his gaze, the woman questions him about it, and he asks if there's something on his face. With a smile, she gets very close to him, and our MC stammers that the swelling is normal. She then lets out a soft laugh, amused by the protagonist's shy reaction. Climbing onto the bed, the woman asks another bold question, and our guy says she's being very forward. The woman continues to tease him, asking if he can't control himself because she's too beautiful. With that, the protagonist turns completely red, not knowing how to respond to the girl. She then laughs and says the young man is good at making others happy, and that she'll trust him. The patient then formally introduces herself as Lin Jingji and extends her hand to him. So funny face, thinking the nickname, Fairy Lin, suits her much better. Just then, the woman asks what he said, but the young man plays it off, saying it was nothing. But she smiles and says she heard him and that everyone calls her Fairy Lin, behind her back. The protagonist then says calling her a fairy isn't quite accurate, leaving her confused. He explains with a smile that she's actually even more beautiful than a fairy. The woman is charmed and says he's skilled and sweet, so she'll grant him one wish. Our guy thinks for a moment and asks to be her nurse for a month, as he might have to leave. Lin Jingji doesn't understand, saying it's a waste and that she could introduce him to some rich ladies. But the young man explains that his goal isn't money, but to save lives as a real doctor. The woman stares at him in silence, seeming impressed by the protagonist's determination. With a gentle smile, she closes her eyes and says she finally understands what he wants. She says she likes men with dreams, and from now on he is her exclusive nurse. Our MC is surprised but very happy and thanks Miss Lin for the opportunity. He then asks if they need a contract, and she finds the young man very interesting. After the protagonist leaves, the woman is alone in her room and picks up her phone. She then calls someone and asks them to investigate everything about a nurse named Yechiu. Moments later, the patient receives a file on her phone with all the information about him. Reading the file, she discovers that our MC has a history of plagiarism and betrayal. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door, and a man in a lab coat greets her with a smile. With a serious expression, the woman asks who he is and what he's doing there. The man introduces himself as Dr. Go Shoukong from the surgery department. He then starts slandering our MC, claiming he plagiarized his thesis and is a bad person. Just then, the protagonist returns and Go tells Lin to fire him because he can't be trusted. The woman smiles and repeats to the young man everything the doctor said about him being lazy. Our guy gets furious and tells Gu not to push his luck, but the rival just glares back. The doctor then turns to the patient and asks her to consider his suggestion carefully. But the woman asks what happens if she insists on hiring our MC as her nurse. The doctor threatens her, saying the hospital won't be responsible for any problems. Annoyed, the woman asks if he's threatening her and if the hospital knows about this. The woman then turns to the protagonist, looking very irritated with the situation. She begins to explain the natural law of the world and how animals adapt to survive. But he asserts that he's not the type to move on, and that he'd rather change the world around him. The patient continues, saying that if he's too nice, people will take advantage of him. Our MC responds with a serious look, saying he understands perfectly what she means. She then asks how long he's going to let others control and use him. The protagonist glares at the doctor, who gets startled by his sudden stare and asks what he wants. Go becomes furious with our guy's attitude and curses at him, his eyes filled with rage. Without a second thought, our MC lands a punch right in the rival doctor's face. Commotion in the patient's room continues. The doctor holds his face in shock, asking how the young man had the nerve to hit him. But our guy responds with a serious look that he's had enough and won't tolerate it anymore. Angrily, the rival lunges forward, shouting that the protagonist is asking for a tragic end. Suddenly, a firm, calm voice orders them both to stop fighting immediately. It was the patient, scolding them for having the audacity to fight in her room. The doctor then turns to her with a serious look and questions who exactly she is. She reveals she's someone the vice president's son can't afford to provoke and tells him to get out. At that moment, Go gets scared, thinking that maybe he shouldn't have acted that way. Before leaving, he glares at the protagonist and threatens him, saying this isn't over. After the doctor leaves, our MC turns and thanks Miss Lin for her help. The woman then smiles and asks how it felt to fight back, and if it was a good feeling for him. With a grin, the young man confirms it felt great, and the two seem to be amused by the situation. The protagonist then asks if she thinks he's a coward for having put up with everything in silence. But the patient looks at him and says he's not a coward, but rather a very kind person. The woman says she understands his mindset, being new to society and having no connections. But she states with a serious look that she doesn't admire that kind of attitude at all. The protagonist remains silent, looking surprised by the patient's harsh words. She then uses a chess metaphor, saying that if he's always the nice guy, the predators will take over. With a smile, the woman tells him not to underestimate her, as she's lived a lot longer than he has. The woman explains that the powerful always fear those who have nothing to lose. She continues, saying that the more status and money people have, the more fear they feel. Furthermore, she reveals that the protagonist isn't completely without someone to support him. The protagonist is confused by the woman's statement, not understanding what she means. She then places a hand on his head and says that from now on, she will be his protector. Our guy touches his ankle while being comforted. With tears in his eyes, our guy thanks Miss Lin for the unexpected support. The patient lets out a little laugh, as if finding the young man's reaction a bit funny. She holds his chin and says a simple thank you isn't enough and teases him. The protagonist turns completely red, speechless from the woman's provocation. Laughing, the woman says it was just a joke and asks him to hand her the contract. With that, the patient signs the contract, and our MC is relieved to have kept his job. The woman then asks if the protagonist can heal her leg, and he explains that the process is slow. Seeing her boredom, our MC offers to take her for a walk, and she gets very excited. Just then, the young man appears with a wheelchair, and the woman praises him for being so thoughtful. Suddenly, she hugs him and says she's going to choose him as her boyfriend, leaving our MC in shock. The woman then sits in the wheelchair, all excited, and they finally head out for their walk. Meanwhile, the protagonist's mother shows up, saying her son and his girlfriend must be busy. She then reveals a special lunchbox with a soup she lovingly prepared for them. Suddenly, the woman freezes in shock at seeing something unexpected and calls out Lily's name. She then sees her son's ex with his rival Dr. Go. Our MC's mother then confronts the girl, who reveals she broke up with him over plagiarism. Utterly shocked, the woman can't believe her son would plagiarize someone's work. The doctor then scoffs, saying the young man stole his thesis and even assaulted him at the hospital. Wide-eyed, the poor lady processes the accusations of plagiarism and being fired. Desperate, she approaches the doctor and pleads with him, insisting it must all be a misunderstanding. but the rival gets annoyed with her persistence and shoves the woman away forcefully. In that moment, the lunchbox she was holding so lovingly falls and shatters on the ground. The doctor mocks the spilled soup and humiliates the protagonist's mother, telling her to clean it up. Even so, the woman collects herself and continues to beg for forgiveness on her son's behalf. No other choice, the lady falls to her knees, thinking she has to do this for her boy. Kneeling on the floor, she begs Dr. Go to give her dear son another chance. With an arrogant smirk, the rival says he's not going to fall for the lady's emotional blackmail. Just then, the protagonist appears and cries out in shock upon seeing his mother in that position. The young man rushes to help her up, telling her to stop humiliating herself. With a look full of hatred, our MC glares at the doctor who humiliated his family. He then lunges forward furiously and grabs the rival's neck with all his strength. Desperate, his mother tries to separate them, saying it was her fault for kneeling. Even while being choked, the rival still taunts our MC, daring him to finish him off. The protagonist responds with a cold glare, asking if he really thinks he doesn't have the guts. He then tightens his grip on the doctor's neck, and his mother screams for him to let go. The woman desperately asks if her son can still hear her or if he's going to ignore her completely. Our guy finally calms down. The rival accuses our guy of trying to finish him off in public. The lady then hurries to apologize, taking all the blame for the commotion. She offers the doctor money to go to the ER and cover any expenses. But the rival is offended and slaps her hand away, yelling if she thinks he's some kind of beggar. The doctor shouts that not even for 1,000,000 yuan would he forgive the young man and that apologizing is useless. Full of hatred, our MC glares at his rival, unable to control himself any longer. In that moment, the protagonist lunges forward and lands a powerful punch right in the doctor's stomach. With that, the rival collapses to the ground in immense pain, not understanding what just happened. But our guy isn't finished yet and grabs the doctor's collar to lift him up again. He then hoists the rival into the air with ease. Our MC's ex-girlfriend watches from a distance, paralyzed by the violent scene. The protagonist's mother is also in shock, her hands over her mouth, unable to believe it. With his eyes glowing red, our MC warns that he will make the doctor pay for what he did. The rival then taunts our guy, saying the place is full of cameras and that he's finished. Desperate, the young man's mother screams his name, begging him to stop immediately. Meanwhile, the ex-girlfriend calls the security department, asking for help quickly. But the protagonist seems unfazed by the threats, maintaining a cold and determined gaze. He then simply throws the doctor to the ground with impressive force, without hesitation. Mercilessly, our guy stomps hard on the rival's hand, who screams in pain from the impact. The protagonist says he put up with the betrayal and the plagiarism, while the other man begs to be let go. Pulling him up by the collar, our MC says he dared to hurt his mother, and that's something he will not forgive. With that, Dr. Gu falls to the ground again, coughing uncontrollably from his injuries. The protagonist then approaches and, with a serious look, demands that he apologize to his mother. Even on the ground and injured, the rival refuses to apologize to the lady and tells him to keep dreaming. At that moment, the young man's fury explodes and he warns that the doctor will pay with his life. He lunges forward once more, vowing to fight until his enemy admits his mistake. RMC then lands a devastating blow that makes the rival spit from the sheer pain. But suddenly a woman appears and yells for the protagonist to stop, surprising the young man. The woman warns the young man, saying that's enough and that he'll go to jail if he continues. The ex-girlfriend then runs to the director and begs for help to save her new boyfriend. With authority, the woman orders our MC to let go of Dr. Go, who just stares at her in silence. She then tries to appeal to the young man, questioning if it's worth being arrested for someone like that. His mentor's words make the protagonist look at his mother, who is crying sadly. With a calm gesture, the director places a hand on the young man's shoulder and asks him to release his rival. Influenced by her words, our guy finally lets go of the doctor, who falls back, drained of strength. Our MC then hugs his mother and warns that if the rival ever dares to mess with her again, he'll make him disappear. But the doctor gets up and accuses the protagonist of trying to take him out in front of everyone. His boss then glares at him and asks if he really wrote that thesis, telling him not to play her for a fool. Firmly, the director ends the argument and forbids anyone from speaking about the matter. She then turns to the protagonist and asks him to go to her office and wait for her. In the mentor's office, she looks at the young man and his mother and says she doesn't know what to say to him. Lady then apologizes to the boss, taking the blame for coming to the hospital to look for him. But our guy warns his mentor that the rival's family is very influential at the hospital. Our guy tells his mentor not to worry, because he's not afraid of the consequences. At that moment, the boss tries to speak, but the young man's mother interrupts, thanking her for everything. The lady then says that these are things her son needs to face on his own, and that the director has already done enough. Suddenly, the office door is kicked open violently as someone shouts the director's name. Everyone in the room turns, startled by the sudden intrusion and the noise. Then a huge, intimidating man enters, and we find out he's the rival's father and the vice president. Angrily, the man yells that our MC assaulted his son, and that the director didn't even want to call the police. He then approaches the boss and asks if she thinks she owns the hospital. The director defends our MC, saying the rival was also in the wrong, and asks that our guy not be punished. But the vice president doesn't want to hear excuses, and says a violent plagiarist can't be a doctor. Hearing that, the director is left speechless, looking very worried about the protagonist's situation. The man continues his lecture, pointing at our MC, and saying he's not even worthy of being called human. Completely losing it, the rival's father yells for security to get the protagonist out of there right now. At that moment, our MC steps in front of the director and tells her to step aside and leave it to him. With a confident smile, our guy asks his boss to trust him, because he can handle this all by himself. The director is surprised by his attitude and looks at him, not understanding what he's about to do. Seeing the security guards approaching, our guy challenges them, telling them all to come at him at once. Suddenly, a luxury car pulls up in front of the hospital, and several men get out. The vehicle screeches to a halt in front of the hospital. An elegantly dressed man with polished shoes steps out of the car, clearly someone important. This man is introduced as Zhao Yun, the personal guard of the powerful Dragon King. Right at the entrance, a nurse recognizes him and offers to call the vice director immediately. However, he ignores her as she makes the call to the vice director. Back in the office, we see that all the security guards have been easily defeated by the protagonist. Our MC then turns to his mother and says that, unfortunately, he won't be able to stay at the hospital any longer. The young man then approaches his mother and tells her they should go home together. At exact moment, the office door opens, revealing the arrival of someone unexpected. The man who just arrived stares at our MC, who wonders who he could be. The newcomer addresses the protagonist and asks if they can talk for a moment. Our guy explains that unfortunately he can't, as he's been fired and is taking his mother home. The bodyguard remains silent for a second, seeming to analyze the situation. Soon, questions arise about who this person with such a sharp gaze is. The vice director finally arrives and apologizes to the visitor, blaming the protagonist for the mess. The bodyguard ignores the vice director and coldly asks if his son passed away. Angrily, the rival's father shouts that his son did not pass away, and that it's no big deal. The man in the suit then turns to our MC and says he's there on the Dragon King's orders. Hearing that, the protagonist is shocked, and the rival's father can't believe what he just heard. The vice president realizes that our MC knows the Dragon King and is left stunned. Our MC and the bodyguard now in the car on their way to meet the mysterious boss. In the vehicle, our guy calls his mother and reassures her, saying he'll be home soon. The doctor then thinks they don't seem like good people and asks what the Dragon King wants. The bodyguard scolds him, telling him to watch his tone when speaking about the king. Bead of sweat trickling down, the protagonist finds the whole thing very mysterious and asks who the Dragon King is. Annoyed, the man yells at our guy, saying everyone in the city knows his boss. He then explains that his boss's name is Long Qianqiu, the king of Jiangzhou's underworld. The protagonist remembers the man from yesterday and realizes he was the so-called Dragon King. The driver confirms he's his personal bodyguard, and our guy is surprised by this. At that moment, the luxury car drives up a road in the middle of a mountain. When they arrive at the mansion, several men in suits bow the bodyguard and greet him. The man then turns to the doctor and asks our MC to follow him inside. A little nervous, the protagonist agrees and braces himself for what's to come. The two then begin to walk up the stairs toward the meeting place. Outside, they spot an elderly man practicing calligraphy in a beautiful garden. The bodyguard says the boss doesn't like to be disturbed and asks our MC to wait. The protagonist silently watches the underworld boss practicing his calligraphy with intense focus. With a keen eye, our guy analyzes the art being created on the paper. The poem speaks of a hero who, despite being victorious and holding the world in his heart, grew old and his life was wasted. Suddenly, the protagonist whispers the word pity, catching the older man's attention. At the comment, the underworld boss slams his brush on the paper, looking irritated. The powerful boss turns to our MC with a terrifying aura and an intimidating glare. Desperate, the bodyguard forces our guy's head down and demands that he apologize. His employee, the older man, asks our MC what he meant by that. Our guy then explains that the poem is about a general who wasn't appreciated in his time. He continues, saying that the boss's strong and heavy calligraphy doesn't match the poem. Our guy compares the feeling to that of a brave old general who is now at the end of his life. Seeing the terrifying glare of the boss, the protagonist gets scared, thinking he said too much. But to everyone's surprise, the powerful man bursts into loud laughter. He then compliments our guy, saying he has a good eye for people, which startles him. The boss then gets serious and reveals he called our young man there because he desperately needs his help. With a somber expression, he reveals that his time is running out and asks the doctor to cure him.